So with me today I have Gerard Lee, CEO of Lion Global Investors. Now Gerard joined Lion Global in November 2010 from Fullerton Fund Management, where he was CEO and credited with turning Temasek's in-house investment team into a respected third-party player. So welcome, Gerard. Thank you for being here. Now your panel today was really interesting. It was about Asian asset managers going global. And there was quite a bit of discussion about the necessity to be regional, and whether that's regional capabilities or regional scale was also a point of discussion. Now you made a very interesting point that your home market is Singapore, so you have to have that regional outlook in order to grow assets and have market share. But you also made the other interesting point about the Chinese markets and Harvest and China Asset Management, which have a huge home territory, do not necessarily need to have that same regional aspect. And I'm sorry, this is a very long question, but the point is, can you skip being regional altogether and just take that jump into the global arena?
No, you definitely can. It depends on whether you want to look at the supply side of the equation or demand side of the equation. I think from the supply side of the equation, it's probably more difficult for you to be a domestically focused manufacturer and then just leapfrog into being a global manager. You can only do that by acquisition, but then the attendant problem of merging the teams will be a problem. But if you are looking simply from the demand side of the equation, if you are China AMC and your only product is Chinese equities, there will be demand from US, from Europe and other parts of the developed world to buy into Chinese equities. So China AMC can indeed go global without going regional.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. So we've seen very few asset managers go global really today. I mean, we can name a couple. Mirai, for example, of are known on the global stage. Why is that? Why have we not seen many more Asian managers go global?
Okay, the reason for that is twofold. Again, we have to look at Asia in terms of the big countries and the small countries. For the big countries like China, India, they had the benefit of tremendous growth in their domestic market. So they have enjoyed wild success in terms of profitability, in terms of AUM growth. So I think they are still very focused on trying to grow their home market, to penetrate it more effectively. There's still a lot of work left to be done. But somebody like Mirai, for example, Korea is probably in stage 2 of the evolution. They have now found that just by relying on their home market, they will not be able to grow to the same extent that their cousins like Samsung, like Hyundai and so on have grown globally. So they would like to sell their products globally as well, and that's the reason why Mirai has gone into all these other countries. So I think in due course, the China AMC, the Harvest FMC, either by necessity or either by the need to have a higher global profile, they would take the route that Mirai has taken, and they would have the balance sheet to do it. On the other hand, you have the smaller AMCs in smaller countries like Singapore, for example. We may have the ambitions to grow globally, but we may not necessarily have the balance sheet in order to set up offices in Brazil, in US, in Canada, and various parts of Europe. It's very, very expensive, So our end game could be somewhat different.
But there are lots of boutiques known globally that are small, that have that capability because they've built it through investment performance. Yep. And working with distributors and other fund managers. Are those your plans for Lion Global Investors? Do you want to push into Europe and America through partnerships, or do you plan to grow organically?
Yeah, for a player like Lion, we have only begun selling into Europe and America. So we recognize that there are many ways of doing it. We either set up our own sales offices, appoint people on the ground who are employees of Lion, or we should take an intermediate step and rely on third-party distributors. So at this moment, we are relying on third-party agents as step one of our access into the Western markets. Over time, then we have to figure out what else we need to do. Okay, through various forms of collaborations or even mergers and acquisitions. We won't rule that out. But for now, even within the Singapore context, Lion is the biggest, and our parent company is a bank and an insurance company. So we're actually in a much better position than most of the other boutiques in Singapore. I suspect that they probably will find it going easier by partnering somebody from Japan, partnering somebody even from Europe. In fact, very often we get European AMCs who do not have an Asian manufacturing capability wanting to buy a stake, not necessarily the whole company, but just a meaningful stake in a Singapore-owned AMC in order to have their Asian strategy. So that actually could be mutually beneficial.
Very good. So what are the other most common obstacles facing Asian asset managers who are looking to go global? Is it a cultural thing? Is it finding those distribution partnerships or finding sub-advisory relationships? What, in your view, are the main obstacles?
Okay, usually when you want to look at the success of AMCs, you look at about 3 or 4 Ps. First P being performance, second P is people, the third P is process, and finally fourth P is product. Okay, all 4 Ps are very important. Most of the Asian AMCs have not been around for that long, so in terms of track record, they would have probably a 3 to 5 year track record, but they don't have anything in excess of 10, for example. So that is a problem. In terms of the people they have, most of them have been first generation asset manager. So their bosses usually are people who are not from the business, so that does present a problem. When you talk about investment process, everybody now understands that the global business is gate-kept by the consultants. So there is a need to build your process around what the consultants want. And because the domestic markets for most of these Asian AMCs have grown so fast, so the best practice that they are known, that they have been accustomed to, need not necessarily be global best practice. So now they actually have to get used to global best practice. So that takes time. And then finally, in terms of products, the products that they have for the domestic market need not necessarily be products for the Western market. Take for example, for most of the Asian, or rather for most of the Western investors, when they talk about investing in Asia, normally it's in the context of global emerging markets. So unless you manufacture Asia plus LATAM plus Eastern Europe, you're unlikely to get the mandate. Because for most of us in Asia, we only manage Asia.
You're only looking at China or Asia, yeah.
So the time has not come yet. So unless MSCI and FTSE change the definition, of what Asia means, and the plan sponsors in both US and Europe allocate to Asia on a standalone basis, we may still not get a business.
But that's going to change.
That will change, yeah. We just have to be patient.
One last question, Gerard. Where do you see Asian asset managers in 10 years' time? Are they going to dominate the top 10 fund management groups?
If we just look purely in terms of AUM, they may not dominate the top 10 AMCs in the world, but in terms of top 50, top 100, I think you'll get many Asian names coming from China, India, Japan, as well as Korea. Okay, reason for that is simply because of scale of China. Take China, okay? I know I've been following the Chinese market quite a fair bit over the last 8 years or so. China AMC, the biggest, when I first knew them about 6-7 years ago, they were not even managing 4 billion US. Today they are managing US 40 billion. I would suspect that they will cross 50 very easily and hit 100 probably within the next 5 to 7 years. And when you have crossed US 100 billion, you are somebody, you're probably in the top 50.
So the future is definitely Asian.
I think so, yeah.
Thank you very much, Gerard.